Welcome back for another Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous Beginner's Guide. In today's video, I'm going to be focusing on feats. I know as a new player myself, feats are one of the aspects of this game that can certainly feel a little overwhelming to say the least, because there's just so many damn choices. So in this video, I'm going to go over some of the more important feats to hopefully help narrow that list down for you earlier on in your playthroughs, regardless of what class or build you end up going with. For more Pathfinder content, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Links to my Twitter and my Discord server will be below. Let's jump right in. I'm going to do most of this video right here in the character creation screen because it's a great place to see all of the core feats in the game. And also, you guys will notice that many feats are prerequisites for other feats in the game. For example, if we click on point blank shot, you can see that after we take that feat, we'll then get access to all of these feats right here. And if you scroll down, you can actually see all of the feats that are actually feats that require a prerequisite feat. Over here on the right side, you guys will notice that every single class in this game gets a feat at level 1 and every odd number after. So level 1, 3, 5, 7, all the way up to level 19. But certain classes and certain builds will get more feats, such as the fighter, which gets a feat every single level on their journey to level 20. So that's kind of like what the fighter is known for, is having a massive amount of feats. Keep in mind that depending on which class you choose and how you put points into your ability scores will also affect what feats are going to show up with that particular character right away in character creation. For example, if I only had a 12 in strength, then the power attack feat would not show up for my fighter right now, because as you guys can see, to take power attack, you have to have at least a 13 in strength, and I have an 18, so this feat is present right away in the beginning. All right, the first feat that I want to talk about, and perhaps the most important feat in this game, is actually the point blank shot feat, which gives you a +1 bonus on attack and damage rolls with ranged weapons of up to 30 feet. So if you're within 30 feet, you get a +1, you're more likely to hit your targets, and you also get to deal a little extra damage, and this will add up throughout your playthrough. This feat alone isn't insanely powerful, but the reason why this feat is so important is because it's a prerequisite for another feat called Precise Shot. Precise Shot will allow you to shoot or throw ranged weapons at an opponent that's engaged in melee combat without suffering the standard -4 penalty to attack rolls. So anytime that you shoot a ranged attack at an enemy that's engaged in melee combat, so if your paladin is fighting an enemy and you're an archer standing in the back, when you shoot at that enemy, that same enemy, you're going to take a -4 penalty to your attack rolls, meaning you're much more likely to actually miss your shot. And this definitely happens a lot, especially earlier on in the game. Precise Shot is going to get rid of that -4 penalty. Now, what a lot of people don't consider is that Precise Shot is also good for many spellcasters, support spellcasters, and offensive spellcasters. So we already made it obvious that if you're using ranged weapons and that's one of your primary ways of dealing damage, you just have to have point blank shot and precise shot. Now, if you're a support caster, maybe a companion like Daeran that does mostly buff spells and heals and stuff like that and isn't really that offensive, for the most part, Daeran's going to be shooting his crossbow at the enemy to deal damage in between heals and stuff like that. So dealing damage with Daeran's ranged weapon is actually fairly important, even though he's not a damage dealer, so to say. Taking Precise Shot is going to make all of those crossbow shots deal much more damage in the long run. Hit more often, not necessarily deal much more damage, but hitting more often leads to more damage, so you guys get what I'm saying. And then also offensive spellcasters, one example could be Nenio, that use a lot of ranged touch attack spells, which are mostly ray spells in this game, also will benefit from Precise Shot. So if you're playing as Nenio and you use Scorching Ray, or maybe even Ember, and you use Scorching Ray a lot on your enemies that are engaged in melee combat, you're going to take that -4 penalty, so you need Precise Shot to get rid of that. If you're not really sure what type of spellcaster you want to become, like maybe you're thinking about being a summoner or using a lot of illusion spells or enchantment spells, this won't really come into play as much. So you could consider waiting a couple levels to see what you're going to do and what your favorite spells are. But spells like cantrips like Acid Splash and spells like Snowball and Scorching Ray, there's a lot of ray type spells that this will very much benefit from. So point blank shot leading to Precise Shot is one of the most important feats for your ranged weapon damage dealers, some spellcasters, and a lot of the support spellcasters that rely on their ranged weapon to deal the damage that they deal, even if it's not much. The next feat is a fairly straightforward one, and you really can't go wrong choosing it early on in your playthrough, especially with your martial weapon focused characters, and that is weapon focus. So if you know what weapon you're going to use with a specific character, you might as well choose weapon focus, click on that weapon, and then you get a +1 to all attack rolls made when you're using that specific weapon, as you guys can see right here. So if you don't know what weapon you want to go with, hold off on choosing this feat, but if you know right away I'm going to be a sword and board fighter using a longsword, seelah is a great example for that. Choose weapon focus, get that +1 on all attack rolls. And the great thing about this feat is that it also opens up to many more feats, such as greater weapon focus, giving you another +1 to your attack rolls, and also weapon specialization, which gives you a +2 bonus on all damage rolls. The next two feats are also fairly straightforward, and that is armor focus and shield focus, which is a little bit lower on the list. Now, armor focus isn't necessarily as important of a choice as weapon focus and point blank leading to precise shot, but if you know what type of armor you're going to use, if you choose armor focus, it'll give you a +1 armor class every time you're wearing that armor, which will probably be the entire game. Now, +1 is nice to have, but later on in the game, it might not mean as much. But then again, if you're really focused on building a tank character that has a ton of AC, you're probably going to take AC in any way that you can get it. And if we look down here, there's also shield focus, which will give you another +1 while using a shield. So if you're a frontline tank and you want to just keep boosting that armor class, you can take armor focus heavy and also shield focus, and shield focus opens up to other feats such as greater shield focus, which gives you another +1, and then shield focus, which is a mythic feat, which basically boosts your touch armor class. So if that's the focus of a specific character, you might as well boost your AC as much as you can. You can't really go wrong with these choices. The improved initiative feat you really can't go wrong with. I actually didn't take it with any of my characters, and I want to respec now to go back to take it because I can see how useful it can really be. So if you take this feat, you get a +4 bonus on initiative checks. So in turn-based mode, if that's how you're playing, you'll oftentimes be earlier on in the order of turns, meaning you get your attack off before the enemies get to do their turn. And in real time with pause, it means that you'll be able to attack quicker more often than the enemies. So characters like Daeran that are more support-based, that are kind of waiting for things to happen before they heal and stuff like that, they might not need this as much as, let's say, your ranger or your wizard, your classes that really can put off a spell or a powerful attack at the start of combat to really change the way that it goes. So consider improved initiative, especially with the characters in your group that are really good at battlefield control and dealing damage. The next feat is a powerful feat that's oftentimes overlooked for spellcasters, and that's called spell penetration. So in this game, you're going to come across enemies once in a while that have spell resistance, and if you can't overcome that spell resistance, your spell's not even going to work at all. So when you take spell penetration, it increases your chances of overcoming that spell resistance number. So when you cast a spell at a creature that has spell resistance, the game is going to roll 1d20 plus your caster level, and if you match or exceed the spell resistance number, the spell will go through with its normal routine, whether that's a ranged attack roll or a saving throw, etc. If you take spell penetration, you get a +2 added onto that roll. So if we come across a creature that has 25 spell resistance, and let's say that we roll an 18, we're level 5, so that 18 becomes a 23, we don't actually match or exceed the 25 spell resistance, and our spell's not going to work at all, which is really frustrating. But if you have spell penetration, you get that +2 added onto it, which boosts our 23 to a 25, and then our spell can actually come into play. Now this feat is going to be more useful later on in the game when you come across more enemies that actually have spell resistance, because if you're fighting enemies that don't have spell resistance, which there are a lot of those also, it's not going to matter at all if you have spell penetration. But in my playthrough so far, I am coming across some really tough enemies, and without spell penetration, it would just be a much tougher fight. You guys will also notice that spell penetration leads to other feats, a mythic feat called spell penetration, and also greater spell penetration, which adds even more to your caster level check. So I think it's really good to have one person in your, at least one caster, offensive based caster, that has the ability to overcome spell resistance. I recommend this feat. If you guys have any opinions on it, let me know below. While on the topic of spells, we might as well talk about spell focus, which is a great early on feat to pick up for your spellcasters. Like weapon focus, with spell focus, if you know what type of spells you're going to be casting most often, you might as well choose spell focus for that school of magic. Evocation is obviously a common choice here, and if you choose a spell focus, a +1 is added to the difficulty class for all saving throws against spells from the school of magic you select. So spells are going to be resisted less often if you have a spell focus, and you can choose spell focus into multiple schools as you keep leveling up. So if you have 2 types of spells that you use a lot, you might as well do spell focus and make them more powerful. And spell focus also leads to greater spell focus, which increases the difficulty class by 1 once again, and then all sorts of other spell specializations and stuff like that. So spell focus is a great early on feat to take. You might even want to take it before you take spell penetration, and you can always respec if you're starting to play a spellcaster and you don't know what type of spells you're going to be using most often. You can choose spell focus later or respec and pick it up later on in your playthrough. The next 2 feats are really easy feats to pick up early on for your weapon damage dealers, specific types of weapon damage dealers, and that is power attack and deadly aim. Power attack is kind of the melee version of this, while deadly aim is the range version. So power attack is going to give you a +2 bonus on all melee damage rolls at the cost of a -1 to your melee attack rolls and combat maneuver checks, and every time your base attack bonus reaches +4 and 4 after that, that +2 is going to increase, and the -1 is also going to increase. Now the -1 kind of sounds like you don't want to take that. Of course, who would want a -1? But generally speaking, the damage increase is worth taking this, and overall you're going to deal out much more damage on your playthrough if you take this. Now this feat is mostly important for those of you that want to use 2-handed weapons, as it's going to increase the damage by half, which is a +50% when you're using a 2-handed weapon. So you may consider taking it with a 1-handed weapon, but really this is a no-brainer for your 2-handed weapon fighters and classes that use weapons like that. Deadly aim, like I said, is the ranged version of this, and you'll take a +2 to your damage rolls at the cost of a -1 penalty to your ranged attack rolls. So this is only for characters that are really focused on dealing that ranged weapon damage. And once again, as your base attack bonus increases in increments of 4, your +2 is going to go up and your -1 is going to go down. So these feats are feats that you have to activate before you actually strike or take your shot, and you can just leave them on or take them off. For the most part, you're going to leave them on and notice a big increase in damage throughout the course of your playthrough for those characters that are specifically meant to deal out massive weapon damage. And this brings us to our next feat, which power attack is a prerequisite for this feat, and that feat is called Cleave. So the character that ends up taking power attack, which is probably going to be your 2-handed weapon damage dealer, should probably also take Cleave, because Cleave can be insanely powerful. So as a standard action, you can use Cleave, and if there's an enemy that's adjacent to the enemy that you're attacking, you're going to get a free attack on that enemy that's adjacent. So this is just a lot of extra damage. Now it does come with a -2 penalty to your armor class, so keep that in mind. So this isn't really necessarily meant for like your tanks, but more so your damage dealers, like a 2-handed weapon fighter. And if you take Cleave, you of course can then end up getting cleaving finished and improved cleaning finished, which makes it even more powerful. But power attack and Cleave are just 2 excellent feats to pick up early on, especially for your 2-handed weapon damage dealers. All right, I'm only going to talk about a few more feats and then we'll end the video. I want to make sure that I keep this one simple. Once again, these are feats that most new players doing general class builds will be able to benefit from early on in their playthroughs. The next feat is called Rapid Shot, which of course benefits your ranged damage dealers once again. When making a full attack with a ranged weapon, you can fire 1 additional time this round at your highest bonus. The key word here is when making a full attack, so this does not work for spells. Just keep that in mind. If you use Rapid Shot, all of your attack rolls will take a -2 penalty, making it a little less likely that you'll land your shots, just like with Deadly Aim where you took a -1. But generally speaking, if you're playing a class that's really built around ranged damage or ranged weapon damage, the -2 penalty and that -1 are still going to be not significant enough to make it to where you don't want to take Deadly Aim and Rapid Shot. The damage boosts that you'll get from these over time typically is going to far outweigh the amount of misses that you end up experiencing. So Rapid Shot's a really good feat to take, but it's even better for your your ranged weapon damage dealers because it leads to another feat called Manyshot. And Manyshot basically allows you to fire 2 arrows if your first arrow actually hits its target. So with rapid shot and Manyshot, if you shoot at an enemy and the arrow hits, you're getting an automatic 2 hits right away, and then rapid shot's going to give you another arrow after that. And then of course in general you're going to get extra attacks as you level up with some of these martial classes. Rapid shot, Manyshot, deadly aim, just a powerful combination to deal out massive damage with your ranged weapon damage dealers. And the last feat that I'm going to talk about, I don't even know if it's going to show here. Yes, it is. It's called Selective Channel, just because this feat has been so important for myself using seelah and also using daeran. If you're going to play a class like an oracle, a cleric, or even a paladin that gets channel positive energy or channel negative energy, which is an AoE heal or an AoE damage effect to undead, if you don't take Selective Channel after you pick up those spells, if you decide to use channel positive energy, it's going to heal the enemy also with that big AoE circle. Selective Channel will make it so that it doesn't heal the enemy and only heals your team. And this works the same way with channel negative energy. You don't want to hurt your own team when casting that spell. So Selective Channel, really, really important feat to take with all of your characters that use channel positive energy, which is a really, really good heal in this game, especially clerics, oracles, and oracles, oracles, especially with clerics, oracles, and paladins and other classes that get that spell. This is just like a necessity, which is why I wanted to bring it up in this video. So be on the lookout for Selective Channel as you keep playing those classes that have those healing abilities. Now, I was just about to end the video, but I forgot to briefly mention 2 weapon fighting. So if you're someone that wants to wield a weapon in each hand, you definitely want to take 2 weapon fighting if that's going to be your focus to deal damage that way, because 2 weapon fighting is going to massively reduce the attack roll penalties that you take when you're 2 weapon fighting. So this feat is very, very important. And 2 weapon fighting also leads to other great feats such as double slice, which is going to allow you to add your full strength modifier to your offhand weapon, and then of course improve 2 weapon fighting. So this is certainly a feat that is not to be overlooked if dual wielding damage is the way that you want to go with this game. There's also ways that 2 weapon fighting can benefit a sword and a shield, but that's a little bit advanced for this video, so we're going to skip over that. So those are most of the core feats that I think most new Pathfinder players can end up benefiting from if they're doing more general class builds, which most new Pathfinder players do, including myself. If you still find yourself wondering what feat to take because maybe I only talked about 1 or 2 in this video that suits your class, there's a lot of feats that also just offer general passive boosts to armor class and HP, and you can't really go wrong with them. And always remember that you can respec later in the game. Also keep in mind that, like I said, many feats are prerequisites for other ones, so if you're confused, you can just go further into the feat that's a prerequisite for a more powerful version of that feat, and so on, and then you'll get into mythic feats, which can further boost that also. And that'll be it for today's video. Thank you guys so much to those of you that made it all the way to the end. I really do appreciate it. All of you guys out there that are really experienced with Pathfinder, make sure to share your thoughts below and maybe expand upon some of mine. I know that we all appreciate that. I definitely take a look at all the comments to see that stuff myself. More Pathfinder content to come, and I'm also going to start doing some D&D narrations once again for those of you guys that like those story type videos. So be on the lookout. Catch you on the next one.